I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please, Veronica.
Ms. Casbon-Latourette.
Here.
Mr. Coleman. Mr. Gray.
Here.
Mr. Guziak.
Here.
Ms. Hyde.
Here.
Mr. Murphy.
Here.
Ms. Ori. She's here.
Cheers. Okay. Then rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hang on just a second. I'll get a flag posted.
You have the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I didn't receive any public comments. Did you, Jason?
Did not.
Okay. All right. Do we have, I don't have any addition of non-action items. So we're on to action items. Approval of board policies as listed.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the board policies as listed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. On to item B, approving changing of the name to Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the changing the name of Columbus Day to Indigenous People Day.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
Yes. If I understand correctly, isn't Columbus Day a state holiday? And if it's designated as a state holiday, how can we change it?
We can't change the state designation, but you can designate whatever day that Melbourne would call it.
That wasn't my understanding when I asked around a little bit. Now, the Chicago public schools are getting away with it because they're kind of their own entity.
Okay.
So us changing the name, that would seem to be something that the state would do, not a school board.
I believe that what Jason says is true, and that what we decide to call it as a district is up to our district. We can't decide to, for instance, not take the day off because that's designated by the state. But from my understanding, the district can decide to call it whatever we'd like.
So the information you got is kind of contradicting what I was able to find out. So in other words, we can't pick another state holiday. We couldn't call Pulaski Day, I don't know, Groundhog Day. We wouldn't be able to do that. So it seems to me that you would need the state legislature to act in order to be able to change the day of a state designated holiday. I mean, if we're going to use that reasoning, then why don't we just call it Jim Guziak Day and call it good?
Can I ask, Jim, where you got that? Where you heard that we can't call it something else?
Sure, that was just doing research as to how the Chicago public school was able to do that. They kind of run by their own rules, from what I could tell. And there's actually, if you're just going to look at public, they weren't really that keen on it, at least a lot of the people. So it was kind of done against the will of the people, at least some of the people. So it really is a question at this point. I mean, shouldn't we know for certain that we can do this instead of having the state act?
I think that's a fair point, but again, I'm just wondering, like, where was it a website that you found that that the school can't do it?
No, it's not so much that they can't. What it is that it's a state designated holiday. So if you just go out and, you can try Googling the state holidays, the recognized state holidays, and it's identified as Columbus Day, along with the other ones.
Yes, you are correct.
With the precedent that has been done by school boards in the past, I think we're probably safe to move forward. Jim, if you don't want to vote for it, you don't have to vote for it.
Okay, and what are you basing that safety on? How are we safe to do? Which other boards have been okay with this, other than, of course, the Chicago Public School Board?
What do you think that the risk is?
Well, the risk is you're going to be disenfranchising a lot of Italian Americans, for one thing. Don't you think there's a risk involved with that?
I do
Maybe
not.
you don't. Oh, okay. So that's interesting.
Are there any further comments beyond what we've heard?
No.
Okay, are we ready?
I have a question. I'd like to know what the substance of this is.
Brendan, could you speak to that, please?
Yeah, the substance of this is that the history of Columbus in America is, as we become more aware of the political ramifications of this, is that Columbus didn't necessarily discover America. It was already there. The history of Columbus as a person and what he was doing was actually extremely violent and has a lot of has led to a lot of subjugation of Native peoples and violence, and so really at this point, I think a lot of people are coming to the realization that Columbus was not necessarily a person to revere, even though we'd like to recognize that the United States and the country as a place, that maybe it would be more respectful to celebrate it as the people who are here rather than Columbus.
Okay, so why don't we have a Vikings Day? They were probably here first, or perhaps the Knights Templar. Now, I'll be on board for Knights Templar.
So Jim,
because
that's not the
Knights Templar Day-
discussion. That's not the
Knights
discussion that
Templar's
we're
Day is
having.
good.
No,
I'm sorry, pardon me?
that's not the discussion that we're having. We're having whether to change it from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. And we should stay on
Right.
that.
And, okay, that's fine. So, but if the name's going to be changed, why Indigenous Peoples Day? Other than the fact that it seems to be a popular thing to be doing. And why are we out disparaging Columbus of all things? Seriously? All it is pretty much is just talking points.
Oh.
That's all it is.
So I think that this is brought up as a proposal for a future agenda item. And then it was on, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was on discussion last week. And now it's up for a vote. And this is the first time we've heard anything other than support for what Brendan proposed.
You never heard any support from me.
But we
Okay,
didn't
so
hear any
I
discourse.
think at this point, it doesn't sound like we have new discussion to offer. So I'd like to call the vote now, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Coleman?
Did anybody have anything else of substance to offer?
No.
Okay, then All in favor of, I guess we can't do it that way. We have to do roll call and everything, don't we? Likely. Yeah, so let's do a roll call on this, please, Veronica.
Jason's asking for 1 second. Jason, you're on mute.
I think Sean was trying to talk and I can't unmute him. Sean, were you trying to say something? Oh, he's froze.
Okay. Is he back?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Sean,
Yeah,
were you trying to say something? I just didn't want to.
I was. The connection's terrible, but I'm trying to get the
Sorry,
substance of.
excuse me 1 second, Sean. I'm sorry. You, everyone, if you aren't speaking, could you please put your phone on mute because we're having some feedback issues? Thank you.
Thanks, Carissa. So what I'm saying is this is new discussion and that I'm trying to understand the substance of this. I'm familiar with the history. I'm familiar with what's been brought forth most recently. But I'm trying to understand that this is what the context is. To me, it's a day of protest now rather than a day of celebration. Because when I asked the question about what this represents, I didn't hear anything about celebrating the contributions of the indigenous people. I don't know if this applies to indigenous people everywhere or whether this just applies to Native Americans or certain tribes that were impacted by the disease that was spread knowingly or unknowingly. So and does it only apply to the impact of Columbus on the Native Americans, or is it through the treatment, addressing the treatment of Native Americans throughout history and even till today? So I'm confused by what Indigenous People Day is. And, in the absence of that, I'm unable to vote for it.
Sure. Brendan, could you possibly clarify?
Because let me just say real quick, so right now, it just sounds to me like non-Columbus Day rather than Indigenous People Day.
Sure. So Columbus Day is a celebration of the discovery of America, not necessarily the person Columbus, because the person Columbus is not necessarily somebody you would want to celebrate when you understand his history. So if we are celebrating the discovery of this land, then we should just celebrate the people who were living in this land, who make up the First Nations of this land. So it's the indigenous people, the people who were here, living here, when the rest of the world came by.
So the people who crossed the ice bridge, are we recognizing people who crossed the ice bridge onto this continent some however many years ago, thousands of years ago? Is that what this is a recognition of? Or is this, again, an anti or non-Columbus Day? And I'm not saying that I'm the biggest Columbus fan. But what I'm saying is I can't support anti-Columbus Day or non-Columbus Day. I would need to know, if we're calling it Indigenous People Day, what does that mean? What will the children be taught? Because I know the kids are taught about Columbus, and thereby, I have some understanding of Columbus Day, but I don't know what Indigenous People Day is other than a protest against Columbus.
It's one other thing, Sean. It's a left-wing talking point. It's very popular nowadays.
Okay,
And
that's not necessary.
No, it's totally necessary, Carissa. These little things keep coming up time after time after time, and you expect everyone to sit back and say that it's okay. It's not okay.
I don't expect anything.
We're gonna lose this vote. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
But
Jim,
believe me, we're gonna be heard, because this is enough.
Okay, so what I was talking about, Jim, was the tenor of the conversation. If we could keep it professional and keep it pleasant, that would be great.
It's very professional and it's pleasant and it's truthful.
Okay, I didn't, please don't talk over me. I didn't put this forward. This was something Brendan put forward. I don't expect anybody to vote any certain way. It's not up to me, and it's not about what I think or what I believe. It's about what we believe as a board and as a district, and how we want to steer the district.
I didn't
So,
say,
is there
I
any
didn't
further discussion?
personalize it to you. I didn't say you specifically had anything to do with it.
Okay.
Unless you're trying to own the left-wing talking point comment,
No,
but that
you
wasn't
did
directed to anybody specifically.
Okay, you did say you, and I thought you were talking to me, and so but that's fine. I totally understand that. No worries. So do we have any other discussion points as we move forward? Okay, then let's vote on this. Roll call, please, Veronica.
I'm sorry, Mr. Coleman, Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Absolutely no.
Ms. Ide,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Oren,
Yes.
Ms. Casbon Latourette,
Yes.
and Mr. Coleman.
Is Sean there? Did we lose Sean again?
No,
Okay. Okay, the motion carries. On to item C, approve the life safety amendment.
hello?
Mr.
Hello?
Coleman,
I don't know if you can hear me, but I vote no.
Yes, yes, I heard you, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good.
The motion
I'd like-
carries. The item is approved. On to item C, approve the life safety amendment. Jason?
Okay, so we have life safety amendment. I'm going to pull it up here. Dr. Johns would be better to explain the details of this, but go ahead, Steve.
Oh, okay. On the life safety amendment, we went ahead and submitted the grant for the $50,000 matching grant. The state came back and said that if we're going to do a parking lot, that the only way that they can approve the grant is if we do a life safety amendment. So the life safety amendment is for the front parking lot at Milburn Elementary School, just to replace that lot. You can't add anything to it. And that's why we selected that spot, because it's estimated about $120,000 of the total cost of the parking lot improvements that we have scheduled. And it is actually construction, because it's going to be torn up and then replaced. So if the board approves this, then the state will go ahead and process our $50,000 matching grant application. If we don't approve it, then we'll say goodbye to the grant, and we still have to pay the $120,000 for the parking lot. So I would recommend that the board approve it.
Okay, does anybody
So
have
Dr.
any
Johnson,
questions for
what is
Steve for
the overall?
It's okay.
What was the question?
Dr. Johns, is this, what is represented here, the amount of money that's changed from, what's the amount of money that has changed from the original proposal that you presented to us?
Nothing has changed. The only difference is that we're doing a life safety amendment, so it's part of the life safety plan. And then the state will give us a $50,000 matching grant. So nothing has changed, except it has to be a life safety amendment in order for the state to approve.
Okay, thank you.
So it's a clerical thing, a bureaucratic thing.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. I think
Okay, great, thank you.
we all appreciate you taking the time to apply for this, Steve. Okay, then shall we vote, please? Roll call, please. Veronica. Oh, wait, do we have a motion on the floor yet?
Not yet.
Sorry about that. I'd like to move that we approve the life safety amendment as presented.
Second,
Okay, roll call, please, Veronica.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes,
Ms. Ide,
yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes,
Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Casban Latourette,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes,
thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Coleman.
That was everyone?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. On to item D.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended part-time contract for Elizabeth Key.
second,
Do we have questions about this?
nope.
Anyone? Okay,
So this is I'll just explain for the public. This is a contract that Elizabeth was in a retirement track in the phase out plan of our administrative reorganization over the last several years. And so she was scheduled to be part-time this year and was working part-time until the COVID-19 hit, and then it's been full-time plus since then. So I appreciate the work that she has done, and Joanne is the next item on the agenda. Joanne Rotundi, our tech director, they've been working very, 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 very hard, and I appreciate what they've done. So what we did is take what they would make as full-time employees for these 3 months and add that to that contract.
okay, further comments or questions? Okay, then let's vote. Roll call, please, Veronica.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes,
Ms. Ide,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
yes,
Ms. Ori, Ms. Ori,
Yes.
thank you. Ms. Casban Latourette, Ms. Casban Latourette,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman, Mr. Coleman,
yes,
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
thank you, guys.
Okay.
yes,
The item carries. On to item E. Denise?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended part-time contract for Joanne Rotundi.
second,
Okay, do we have further questions about this? Okay, then I'd like to vote. Roll call, please, Veronica.
Ms. Ide,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
yes,
Ms. Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Casban Latourette,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman, Mr. Coleman? Okay. Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
yes,
Mr. Coleman?
yes,
Okay,
Thank you. I have it.
okay. The item carries, the motion carries, sorry. The item is approved. On to the consent agenda, which includes, I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda as presented, which includes the committee of the whole meeting. Which includes the approval of minutes as presented, the treasurer's report and approval, approval and payment authorization, the activity account, the personnel report, and that is it.
Second,
Okay, do we have anything anyone wants to pull out for discussion?
Not for discussion, but when do these minutes need to be signed and how are we going to do that?
We will invite you, we'll set up a schedule to invite you in to sign them,
Okay. All right, that's fine.
if that's okay. If not, we can mail them back. Might be easier.
I think
to
we can,
come-
I can come in.
Why don't you stop over with them, Jason?
Okay, I just won't get inside, 6 feet. I would like to point out before the vote, though, that we are hiring 4 new staff members. These are not new positions. They're new people for the same positions. We had 4 retirees this year at the elementary building, so Ben has recommended, and I would approve and recommend as well to the board to hire these 4 people. I had the opportunity to meet them via Zoom last Friday. Not the most desirable first meeting with everybody, but it's very, very good group, and I'm proud of Ben and the team for going through this process now and getting good quality candidates on our staff. So I'm very excited. I think Ben's very excited. Teachers have already contacted them and welcomed them, so they're feeling like part of the team already. 2 of them have worked for us in the past. Mr. Thorson was a long-term sub this last year, and Miss Habetler was a paraprofessional for the last 2 years, maybe 2 years. So we're happy to have them on board. They're doing great.
Good. Does anybody else have questions for Jason? Okay, let's vote. Roll call, please, Veronica.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Miss Ori, Miss Ori,
Yes.
Ms. Casbon-Latourette,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes.
Ms. Ide,
yes.
Okay, the motion carries. On to information discussion items. The COVID-19 update.
Okay. We are under new orders from the governor for the closure of schools and social distancing through May 31st, as most people already know. So that means that carries us through the rest of the school year. We will not be able to have school in our buildings for the remainder of the year. School is still open. It's just not in our building together like we would like it to be. We are monitoring what could be taking place next year, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So that's all I have under COVID-19. The pandemic, I think people are well aware of where we're at with that.
Does anybody have any questions for Jason on this?
Not over
Okay.
here.
Okay, I'm just giving everybody a second for their delay. Okay, on to remote learning.
So
Jason.
as a result of the COVID-19, of course, we're in a remote learning scenario. I think it's going very well overall. Our teachers are working super hard. I'm amazed at what I'm seeing and hearing from them as far as their connectivity with kids. They're doing things they never dreamed they would be doing a month ago. Especially some of our teachers close to retirement. We have, as I mentioned earlier, 4 teachers who are retiring at the end of this year. And then they had a nice long career And all of a sudden, hey, you get to learn how to do school all over again remotely without a whole lot of training at all and very few guidelines. Here you go. And learn this new technology that you've never used before in a way that you've never used it before, and try to teach children who you have no control over, who are in a home that may or may not be accessible or feasible for this kind of learning. So the teachers have done a great job. I appreciate their work, and that's going well. However, we're starting to see some feedback of, I did a thought exchange with just the teaching staff last week, and just like the parent feedback, the teachers are getting burned out and overwhelmed too. With I think a lot of it is the amount of connections they're having with parents and kids because they can't get out of their house. Like before you could leave work, you leave school and go home. Now the school home is all the time and constant, and not expectations that we've put on them necessarily, but they put on themselves of communicating with parents, and they want to help the kids as much as they can and provide them feedback immediately. And if a student's struggling, they're trying to get that help, and it's a lot. And so it's consuming their life, and we have to work on that, set some different expectations for parents and also for the teachers, because it's not going to do anybody any good if they're frustrated and burned out, just like the parents and the kids. So I'm hearing it from both ends, having conversations with some parents who are really struggling, really frustrated, not because of anything we're doing or not doing necessarily. Some would like us to do more, of course, and some would like us to see a lot less, but it's just hard for them to know how to teach their kids, know what the expectations are, know how to do the assignments. This is all new to them as well. Even reading some of the charts that we put out, it has, as much as we're trying not to, it has educational lingo in it that parents don't necessarily understand or have ever seen before. So it's a struggle. It's definitely a struggle, but overall, I think it's going well. We will continue to tweak our process and learn from this and see what works and what does not. But this week, I'd say our efforts need to be on tightening up the schedule a little bit to give teachers a break.
Does anybody have any questions for Jason on this? Okay, thank you, Jason. On to superintendent district goals. So I've been taking webinars and whatnot just to get advice from other school boards, other school board members about how to lead during this time, sort of getting an idea of what other boards are doing right now. And in one of them this week, now that we've moved past the, how do we have a meeting? How is remote learning going? All of that stuff that had to come before this. I thought it was really important for the board to overtly state that we are suspending the goals that we had set last fall for the 2019-2020 school year, and we are adopting new expectations in their place. So if you could read through that, I created this document with Jason and with feedback from Denise, and it just, well, you can read it. It basically just lays out a new set of expectations, which is specifically related to COVID-19, and making it clear that we are not continuing with the goals that we had originally set. So I'll give everybody a moment to read through that. So I'd like to get feedback on this And then we can, if there are no changes, we can just say, this is the document as presented. If there is feedback and some questions, then we can feel free to, take that into account and revise the document. I'm good either way.
Shouldn't we have time to review this, or was this out there? Did I miss it?
We can take time to review it, certainly. Absolutely. No problem.
Well, reviewing it on the fly and reviewing it for instance, reviewing it on my own, or people reviewing this on their own, would seem to be more suitable.
I would agree with Jim. I think that we should let everybody take time to review it, and then we can either add it to to the COW meeting or add it to the regular meeting.
That's great. This isn't something we need to vote on anyway, so I think if we take a couple of weeks just to, make sure everyone's comfortable with what, this is really us, what we're saying to the staff, this is what you should be focusing on right now. And not the other document that we approved in the fall. So I think since it is so important, I think I agree, it would be good for everybody to have time to look through it and review it. And we'll put it on the agenda for next time. Okay.
Okay.
Do you have questions with what they see right now, or do we want to just hold off discussion until the COW meeting?
I'd like a copy and be able to read it and think about it first.
Of course, of course. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you guys didn't get a copy. So we're just presenting this now. And we'll be discussing it next time. I didn't realize you guys didn't have it. That's fine. All right, so then on to future agenda items. We have press policy updates, the renewal of Arbor contract for May 2020. Does anybody have anything else well, I guess we're district goals. Okay. Does anybody have anything else to add?
Not at this time.
Okay. On to superintendent report.
Okay, so I know I just emailed the goals out to everybody so they can see them. Sorry about that. What were our next steps? We'll be talking about what reentry into school looks like next fall. And that is very, very, very murky at this point. But I know I said a little bit of a note in the board notes on Friday briefly about this, but the governor over the weekend did announce that we should be looking at two different scenarios in coming back in the fall, the possibility of remote learning again and the possibility of in-person instruction. So we will be planning for both of those options. Hopefully it will be in-person instruction. That's what we're all very much hoping for. And that's the best case scenario at this point. But then even if we start in the fall, the likelihood of spike in cases again could cause another closure. So we will be ready with a more defined remote learning plan that sets up different expectations. We've been learning over the last 3 weeks what works, what doesn't work. Some things that are going great and some things are a little bit of a struggle. And so we want to make sure we're doing what's best for kids and parents and teachers. So we'll be looking at that reentry plan for next year and starting, and there's different documents that are out there from websites that have things to think about. One of them has 6 categories, and there's tons of checklists under each category on what to think about. It's about facilities and maintenance, because maybe we'll have to hire more people to do cleaning if you have kids here. It's about transportation. There's a possibility people are talking about some sort of split shift scenarios. The possibilities are endless, which makes it a little bit difficult to plan, but we do need to start thinking about that and all the different ramifications that may have. So that's part of that goals, is to plan for next fall.
Okay. Does anybody have questions for Jason?
I'll add one more item, actually a couple more things. One, the teachers are starting to collect the student belongings and put them into bags, so we'll be delivering those next week. The principals will be sending out more information on that. They're doing a great job getting that organized. Teachers are coming in and getting their classrooms not totally cleaned out yet, although some are pretty close after today. Some teachers spent a lot of time today in their classrooms, which is wonderful, and I thank them for it. But we want to get at least the student belongings together so we can get those out of the building and back into the kids' hands for now. And then next Friday, May 8th, is a event at Gurney Mills where we'll have a parade. You've probably heard or seen on the news where teachers will drive through neighborhoods and wave to the kids and honk, and the kids will come out and say hi to their teachers. Well, we're flipping this a little bit, and our third grade team came up with this, and that we would go into Gurney Mills and all the teachers would be stationary and all the parents would come by in that one location. I think it makes sense for a lot of reasons. It won't take as long to drive through. If we had to drive through our whole district, our district's pretty big geographically, so it'd take a while. And then we wouldn't want to, if we didn't get down one street or another street, we wouldn't want to miss somebody and make them feel bad. So this is the best case scenario, and should be a fun event, lots of excitement, and hopefully people will look forward to that. That's it.
That's great. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Jason? Okay, on to the business office report. Dr. Johns.
Okay, I'll just go over this briefly. With all the changes in both expenditures as well as revenue streams, there is going to be a need to go ahead and amend the 2020 budget. So in my report, I have a calendar for that, which would start with a draft budget to be put on, to be reviewed at the CAL meeting, at the May 18th meeting, put on public display, and then following up with approval of a budget hearing and approval on the 22nd of June. Very similar to the calendar that we used last year when we did our amendment. Property tax levy's been finalized. It's about $5,500 more than what I estimated on the cap funds. So, you know, we did a fairly good job of estimating. The plow truck's kind of stuck in limbo because Ford shut down their plants. So we haven't been able to get any of the documentation from them to actually order it yet. So we're just going to kind of play that by ear and see what happens. We have been able to get started with some of our summer projects. The abandoned chimney has already been removed and the roof put back over it. And then on Friday, I met with the civil engineer and the company that will be doing the parking lot work and met with them. There's a very good chance that that will probably start in May as opposed to July. So that can get over with a little quicker. And then I still need to talk with the Anna Vivian in the house as far as, you know, when we want to do that work. So things are moving along. There's some painting that's already going on at both buildings. Some of the things that we typically would do in the summer, because we don't know if students will be coming back, like for an August jumpstart or anything like that. We're trying to get as much done as we can during this time when we know we have no students in the building.
Steve, what do you think, aside from the amended budget, have there been any indications that we are going to be prorated this year by the state?
Nobody really knows that, but we do know that the state is going to be lose a lot of revenue. For this year, we've been told there won't be any changes, but what we don't know is what the new budget for next year for the state is going to look like, because the governor's been very clear that the budget that was adopted isn't the budget that, you know, it's going to have to change because of the fact of all the additional expenses. I did listen to a webinar just prior to this meeting, and one of the comments was, and I think where we'll see the cutbacks, and it may not be that we won't get the money, but they're suggesting like transportation. We've gotten 2 payments so far, probably won't get any more this year. We may only get 2 payments next year. So we may be back in that mode that we were in during the last recession where we have delayed payments. Depending on how long and how severe it is, then at that point, the state may have to look at doing some type of reductions in you know, state support. But we don't know what's going to happen at this point. It's all conjecture. So we do know, though, that this year we've been told we'll still get all of our money. And as in the past, we may not get it all this year. So we have had years where, you know, you may get a couple payments and then the rest of the money comes the following year. So that's just kind of what we're facing, is kind of the unknown. And a lot of it will depend on how much longer people have to stay at home and aren't able to work, et cetera.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about Steve? For Steve about his report. Sorry.
I was going to say I had a couple of questions about Steve, but no. Any of your conversations or anything that you may have heard from the state, did they say that any of our funding would be somehow based on the proposed income tax increase at all? Or are they dealing with money that may not be coming from the proposed increase?
I've not heard anything recently, but I do believe that there were comments made prior to the pandemic occurring that depending on what happened with that progressive income tax would have an impact on future funding, but I don't know specifically what that means or how that would be taking place, but I've not heard anything specific.
Okay,
I don't think they.
Go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
No, I think they'd have to recalculate that now because of the changes. So I haven't heard anything specific other than, yeah, if that doesn't pass it, we're in bigger trouble, or then the state would have less money, obviously. So that would be a problem. But originally what they were saying was that they would budget based on that. So we would get half of our evidence-based funding increase next year and the other half only if it passed.
Okay, so that's significant money, isn't it?
No, we usually only get about 40 grand more per year in evidence-based funding. So it'd probably be about $20,000.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, they're talking not the whole, if it was all of the evidence-based, they were talking about getting half of that would be a big chunk. That'd be 2 million.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, okay.
Yeah,
so this
no,
is...
they're talking about the increase.
Okay.
So some districts, for Round Lake, that's millions of dollars, but for us, it's 20,000.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It's inherently confusing. Okay, any further questions? Okay, on to board reports. Does anybody have anything?
Not from me.
Okay, I did take that one, there was a webinar I attended, sort of, by tenant leadership about that. That's where I got a lot of my the advice about how to move forward as a board and lead during this time. It was very, very helpful. I have the deck from that. If anybody wants it, I'd be happy to forward it to you. Anyone else?
Just a thanks again to everyone that's putting in so much effort. I'm seeing firsthand what it takes to actually keep this going and have momentum and significant contact with their students still. So it's much appreciated. Jason, thank you. And thank you to the administration for keeping things going. You've really done a great job. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's especially important to mention this week, which is Teacher Appreciation Week. So I'm glad you said that. I know we're all so appreciative of everything all the teachers have done and all of the staff. We're so grateful. Does anybody have anything else? Okay. There being no further business, I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Second,
Roll call, please, Veronica.
Do we need a roll call to adjourn?
We shouldn't need the record.
I think, I guess if no one has it, it's hard for me to judge whether how many people are going to with an aye or a no right now.
Okay.
But no, that's fine as long as no one has anything that they want to. Okay. All right, then. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks. I just want to have RJ and Brendan, if you guys could stay in here. Everybody else can meeting, and we'll stop streaming in just